might remember that you were born to die.
I'm doing great after all of those technical difficulties, room snafus. We finally found a new home in this beautiful, beautiful basement suite.
Sweet basement.
Horrible building on the campus of our university.
It has a little cupboard
full of wires
and corpses.
Yeah.
We brought the corpses to build the aesthetic for episode 2 of Dead Kids Club, our podcast about all things dead, dying, archaeology, etc.
and just whatever you want it.
Yeah, whatever you want it to be. You, the listener, tell us what we should talk about.
So, financial crisis.
Yes. Oh God, yeah. Limit it to archaeology, please.
So, before we get to what we're gonna do today, I was gonna talk about how really we need to tell you that this is not a factual podcast, and if you are coming here looking for answers, this is not the place to get them.
No, we're going to give you more questions, probably. This is just a place where you can sort of get like
interested.
Maybe, yeah, like a little spark.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
That first spark. We're like the eHarmony of podcasts. Is that what they say? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's like an initial spark.
They should start saying that.
Yeah, this is like love at first sight, but for
death. But then we ghost you because we just talk about one thing and we don't mention it again. So it's not. You have to do the work.
Yeah, you have to do all the legwork.
We're not going to do it.
Well, we'll talk about something in a pub
and
then we'll Wikipedia it and then we'll tell you.
Exactly.
Despite our credentials as PhD researchers.
Right.
All right.
That's unrelated.
So that's the
disclaimer.
That's the disclaimer.
Yeah. You may not get any real information here. Just some
talking about real and unreal information. What's the topic of the day?
It's deviant burials.
Do-do-do-do.
Dun-dun-dun.
Oh.
Beep, 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 beep.
Aaron takes out his... Are you looking for your air horn?
Yeah, I'm looking for my air horn. Beep, 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 beep. Should have that queued up.
Lisa.
Add it in post.
Lisa. What is a deviant burial?
Well, we're archaeologists here, so sometimes we look at burials. Mostly that's what we look at. And when we find ones that don't match up with the typical way that people were buried in that assemblage or that community or that group, we consider it a deviant burial.
So it can be anything from just being buried in a different location, position, to the fun stuffs, like with the head at the feet, and like
prone burials, and hands lopped off. Oh, a recurring theme of hands lopped off from episode 1.
We should change the title of the podcast.
It's just
hands lopped off.
Hands lopped off. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a deviant burial. So I guess the main reason that I found for these sort of burials is it kind of always came down to like superstition and fear of death, and mainly of people like being afraid of the dead returning and walking among us.
And it was seen as like so the dead would cause all of these issues for the living, be that like sort of disease or misfortune, or they would even blame sort of stuff like flooding or droughts on the deceased. So these deviant burials are often kind of this sort of means of stopping the dead from returning.
Especially if they have like some of their limbs chopped off and things like that. That's kind of to stop them walking. But then also the other, next to that, there is also sort of humiliation. So if that person has done something that, in the community is not considered
if they were a social,
like some sort of criminal or something like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
a social deviant.
Social deviant, yeah. So it's a sort of even after the sort of humiliation and reducing their humanity and things like. I think it was very popular in the Roman times, from what I've read. They did a lot of overkill, a lot of different types of
decapitations,
types of
like
killing.
after death decapitations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, is like a lot of these I don't think seem to occur. It's not like they were beheaded at the grave site and then just thrown in the pit. You do see some that look like they were thrown in just kind of all haphazard, but it doesn't seem like they were killed in that way.
Well, and
as far as I've
couple of the research that books I've read, what was quite funny is that obviously they were kind of looking at the history of archaeology and the deviant burials and how archaeologists have looked at it, and I have this quote that's talked about sort of the way English academics have looked at deviant burials, and it was if I can quote. Face down burials or burials with strange body positions include the famous statement that the undertaker might have been drunk, or that he was too lazy to excavate a grave of sufficient length.
Oh.
So the drunk theory comes from 1869. So it's a fairly old theory, so I'm not sure how to look at it, but I like the idea that instead of looking at it from a symbolic, this person has done something really horrible and therefore we put them, it was just drunk.
That's probably a good
It
possibility.
was his last day on the job.
Yeah.
Didn't give a shit. Tossed him in.
There are competitions, undertaker competitions in digging graves.
Today?
You're just thinking of wrestling.
No. There is. It's a sort of Central European competition.
Is it just digging a hole?
Yes,
is it like who can
digging.
dig the best grave?
I don't know. It was last year.
As an Eastern European, is this part of?
Is it part of my?
Yeah. Did you grow up digging graves?
It's part of my right to become an adult. I have to dig a grave. No, it was on BBC. I don't know when. I would say this year. It was an annual competition somewhere in Eastern Central Europe. Of how the speed and sort of how quick and precision of digging a grave, and the last was won by two Slovakian brothers.
Hell yeah!
Who are under I'm not sure if they're they dig graves. Is that an undertaker? They just do the grave and then they go home.
Grave digger.
Grave diggers.
I guess.
Yeah. So
that fills me with a sense of pride.
Yeah, I think it should.
Slavic descent.
Yeah, I mean they were all, I think, quite Slavic. I mean, who else would do something like that?
We're just gonna dig a hole.
Well, it's not easy to dig a grave.
No.
Because we just had to dig quite a few.
Oh yeah, all those shallow graves that we had to dig for no nefarious purpose at all.
No, it's especially when it's freezing, which it was.
Yeah, it was cold.
And snowing.
Does this competition take place in the nice summer months? Is the ground
I think it was in
thawed?
summer. Yes.
I'm gonna look this up.
Look it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Slavic grave.
I don't put Slavic in
digging
it. Just
contest.
because I'm not sure if they were all Slavic. I presume they were. But...
Hungarian grave diggers compete to be the best.
Well, they're Slovakians last time.
Well, this one's about Hungarians.
Well,
in a graveyard in Hungary, solemn contemplation gave way to frantic sportsmanship on Friday.
Oh.
Well,
as dozens of grave diggers battled to prove they were the fastest and best.
But this
in the
might be
business.
a Hungarian national competition. That one was international.
Oh, okay. So this is the qualifiers. You gotta, the top two from this local contest go to the international contest.
Because, be careful about snubbing the Slovakian win to the Hungarians, because that would cause real issues.
Oh yeah, the winning team wins a place in an international tournament against Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic.
And what do they win?
Just bragging rights. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think...
This job chose me, he said. It's hard, but it's worth it. Relatives come and thank me every time. The profession just lured me in.
Wow.
That was one of the competitors.
Are
Sabahalash.
they just using shovels, or do they have heavy machinery?
I'm not gonna pretend I can
Pronounce that?
pronounce Hungarian. Hungarian's not
Give it the old college try.
Sabahalash.
Chaba.
But Hungarian is very different
Very
to
different. Okay.
what I grew up
There's
speaking.
somebody named Zoltan, and
Zoltan
I used to work with a guy named
Zoltan
Zoltan.
is easy.
Yeah.
Urachik? I don't know. Hungarian is weird as.
Are there pictures from the contest?
Yes.
Yeah, there's
Are they just
totally-
using shovels, or do they have
It's just guys
machinery?
in
Holy
pits,
shit!
digging, throwing dirt over
It
the
looks like the summertime.
walls.
You know what? I think the graves that we had to dig were harder than those because ours had big rocks in them.
Yeah, and like lots of roots.
Yeah,
It
so
was really clay.
we
kinda
could do
soil.
that.
Try to find the international one. There's some funny pictures from it. It looked like a very Eastern European village, and people who live in an Eastern European village.
Oh yeah, Slovakian brothers bury the competition in international grave digging contest.
Oh.
Yep.
I'm gonna send this to my Slovak father. It'll fill him with a national pride. Huh.
Small things for us.
I actually knew a kid who worked in the graveyard, and I don't know if he had to dig graves, but he had to like do a lot of the caretaking and like mowing the lawn around the graves and stuff. He said it was very peaceful, in fact.
Well, talking about like national and cultural pride, I'm not a very nationalistic person. I don't really understand nationalism at all. But I have found out, basically today, that the myth of vampires comes from my own culture. And that the word vampire comes from a word that we still use in my language. So basically, right now it's a day of my like cultural, I wouldn't say national, but cultural pride. Wow. Because I feel like among fake Adidas tracksuit with 4 stripes, Slavic squatting and vampires, we have given the world the best cultural things that have happened to it. I feel great
that's
sense of
probably
pride.
a bold statement. Like, that's stacking it up against like pasta, pizza.
That's not culture. I think that's just fake.
I think a lot of Italians would argue that that's.
Yeah. Well, I still think fake Adidas tracksuits are best.
I mean, that's pretty good, I suppose.
We're all wearing them right now.
Yeah, we're all wearing our matching.
I mean, this sense of pride is kind of aching too, and Slavic squatting became a thing.
I think this is a difficult audience for that because we're all archaeologists, so you squat a lot in that too.
Yes,
so
it's true.
Whether or not we're good squatters because we're Slavs or good squatters because we're archaeologists, are we doubly good squatters, you and I?
Yeah, indeed. Should we get back to people being buried in a weird way?
No, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, that's it.
Bye. All right. So I was talking about degradation and that sort of extreme violence and overkill of the corpse. So I have 2 examples, all of which I took from this great book called Deep in Burials in the Archaeological Record. So,
Did you get that from the library?
Of course I did.
Wow.
So I got a couple from the library.
Wow.
Here.
Marie used a real book.
Yeah.
Yep. I read about, not a lot. I went to bed last night.
I see you're on a page that has a picture on it. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Just looked at the picture.
It's a cool picture.
I know.
Which we shouldn't talk about because it's a podcast.
Sorry, everyone.
But-
We can describe the picture.
It's a
Give
lady
little
on
description.
No. I was gonna talk about the
Paint
sort
us
of,
a picture.
I will paint you a picture about early Christian martyrs and what happened to their bodies
Tell
in
me.
the Roman time.
I'll close my eyes.
So I'm gonna talk about 2.
Is it Perpetua? I love Perpetua.
No, it's San Sebastian and Saint Cecilia.
Oh.
And it's an example of the whatever they did, the triple murder, triple murder.
Wait, one of these saints committed a triple murder?
Yep, I'm sure they did.
So
Sebastian. Sebastian was. Description is shot with arrows, beaten on the head, and then beheaded.
Did they base this? This is based on an anthropological examination of the bones?
No, because that's actually another problem, especially in the Roman time, is that a lot of these. So yeah, this is kind of off because our topic is deviant burials, but a lot of these things, these people were not actually buried, because obviously, the Romans wanted to prevent the followers to snatch the body and create a cult. Not always it was successful. So there are I think Saint Cecilia, which is the other person I was going to talk about, she is said to be buried and exhumed, these sort of things. Okay. But I don't think these are based on archaeological, anthropological analysis. I think this is just
like a purely historical.
It's just sort of allegedly to give the idea of how mutilating the corpse and somehow what happened to it in these sort of cultures like Roman culture, and then how we get to deviant burials. So Saint Cecilia was suffocated by being burned in her own bathhouse, stabbed in the breast, which, come on, don't go for the boobie, and decapitated. I don't like sexualized killing. I mean, obviously.
Maybe it was just a coincidence that's where her breast
is. It? I mean, I would.
Was her breast out?
I presume this was men who did it. Because, sorry, but men do most horrible things in history, so it's just
especially breast related.
Especially breast related things, yeah.
The takeaway is that in these deviant burials, lots of the times there's a sense of overkill, and
that's why I was. Thank you. That's why I was saying.
To prevent the people from coming back and sort of exacting a vengeance on the living.
Yeah. Decapitation is very common in these.
Yeah. When I was working in Poland a number of years ago, at the same time, so the site I worked at actually had a few deviant burials. But at the same time, there was another site, kind of like in Southwest, I think, that had like 6 or 8 burials found with decapitations where they were placed between the feet of the skeletons. At the site I worked at, we had, I think at the time of the almost 300 skeletons we had excavated, 8 or 10 were deviant burials, and they had big farming scythes, Grim Reaper style scythes around their necks, and one had the big arm length scythe around the abdomen, and then there was 1 or 2 with stones in the mouth.
So these are the ones you read about.
Yeah, so it was really cool. So I got to excavate on 2 of those, I think, in my time there.
So they weren't geographically excommunicated from the community. It was just...
No, they were all within the the bounds of the cemetery. They weren't in the periphery. They were.
How old was this cemetery? Was this a Christian cemetery?
Yeah, they were all extended supine east-west orientation.
That's interesting, because kind of what I read was that deviant burials, in pagan times, it was mainly sort of how the person was buried. It was what was showing if it was deviant or not. Mm-hmm. But kind of with the introduction of Christianity, it was the geographical location of where the people were buried, which was the sign of deviancy. So
I found a little bit of both, because I forget, it was this documentary that PBS did a special about sort of vampire burials, but they were talking about how the location of some of them within the cemeteries was mixed in with the rest of the bodies. It was just more in the positioning, be that whether or not they were decapitated or prone burial, or there was a few that they were talking about flexed burials that seemed a little bit kind of shaky as whether or not they were kind of these quote vampire burials, but so I don't think it's always just the location.
Yeah, I don't think it's always, but it was just,
no, that is definitely a theme. They do tend to be sort of on non-consecrated ground, or sort of in these liminal, peripheral kind of locations.
shall we just tell people what a prone burial is before we move on?
Oh yeah, I guess not everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So prone burial is face down, and supine is sort of face up, lying on your back. The kind of classic, like Catholic Christian style burial.
Flexed is
like when your knees are brought to your chest.
Like a fetal position.
Yeah. Well, you have mentioned vampires. I feel like we should get to the exciting part of evening
Okay,
burials.
good, because I purposely did not study anything about vampires because I want you to tell me about it.
Well, I hope you said you had a lot of it. I don't have that much.
I have nothing. I went a completely different route. I told Erin about it, but
Are you going to talk about it?
yeah, but not about vampires. So tell me about vampires first.
All right. So vampires are one of the many deviant burials, and they kind of, there is a lot in the folk and there's a lot in the myth. It's kind of from all over the world. It kind of boils down to somebody coming back from the dead and somehow affecting the living. What was interesting, what I found is that a lot of this folklore, they did say that vampires go after the relatives first.
Yeah, I read that too.
So what it kind of tells you is how this was linked to disease. So, if somebody died of a certain disease, and then very likely somebody in their household
also had the disease
and died afterwards, sort of, it kind of was linked to vampires and to...
I wrote an exact note about that. We're on the same page.
What do you have to say about it?
I just said that, it sort of shows that this connection with disease and sort of
tuberculosis is often mentioned, and what was the other one?
Cholera
And tuberculosis and some sort of plague. It's just there was so much superstition. I found this. It was not written in English, but this amazing master's thesis about vampirism and the
by whom? What's the name of the person?
Really?
Make something up.
I know the name, but it's Czech, so it's gonna sound weird.
Give him a shout out.
It was by a lady called Veronika Kozlíková.
Shout outs.
Oh. I think it was 2008, so it's not new. But it was
Hope you're doing well.
I hope she's with us still.
Why would she be dead?
When was it? It was when?
2008.
It was 10 years ago?
Jesus.
Did her master's 10 years ago, and maybe she's dead.
That's dark.
Okay, well,
Well, we're talking about vampires.
We
don't know what she encountered during her research.
Who are we to say?
Shit, yeah.
Yeah. So, I was like, this must have been amazing to write. Like, there's so much stuff on it. But there are so many
Do you
fun
think
stuff.
she encountered any real vampires?
I hope she did. Like, interview.
Gross.
And there's so many fun ways to become a vampire, as I found out. Literally anything in the early pagan sort of era of Eastern Europe. Anything that could happen to you, they would turn you into a vampire. Like if when you died, you didn't get stiff quite quickly enough, that is a sign of you being a vampire. Or if you were jumped over by a dog, cat, or a rooster.
What's so funny, Erin?
Just the joke about if you didn't get stiff quick enough, you're a vampire.
Mm-hmm. We all know that to be true.
Totally. Who among us hasn't had that problem, am I right? Hey. Bunch of vampires listening out there. Shout out to all the vampires in the audience.
It's not you. It's the vampire.
It's the vampirism. That's why you need to drink blood, because then otherwise you're just flaccid all the time.
This goes down wrong. Also, you can become obviously a vampire without being dead. You can still be alive and be a vampire in these sort of traditions. Anything can happen. But, mainly it's like weird ways to die.
Yeah,
So,
that's the kind of a
there's the
running
kind of
theme, is
yeah,
that if you
it's
die in a bad
suicide,
death.
a lot, violent death. But also if you die on like a specific day, a specific hour. Sometimes it's even if you were born on a specific day and a specific
just
hour.
predetermined.
They
to
wait
be
till you
a-
die and then you become a vampire.
Probably.
Okay.
And also, there was one quote, talking about the stiffness again.
Yeah.
That sometimes they waited for days to wait if the body gets stiff before they buried it.
Days, Aaron.
That's a long time to wait.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait that long.
You need to consult a doctor.
If you don't get stiff enough quickly.
For that many days. No, it's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
If it lasts more than 4 hours. If your rigor mortis lasts more than 4 hours, you might be a vampire.
Oh, and also if the dead body, like if a unpure shadow fell onto the
What the
dead
fuck
body.
does an unpure shadow mean?
Is that a euphemism? What does it mean?
I don't know. You tell me.
Alright, let's spitball. What's an unpure shadow?
I just can't stop thinking about Frank in Always Sunny saying he wants to be pure, covered in hand sanitizer.
I just want to be pure, Charlie. Just sliding around like a
He's so
slug.
slimy.
Man, Danny DeVito is great.
I feel like he really shaved his whole body for that. You can't fake that.
No, I think he must have done it.
Slicked down and...
God,
Dope,
the things
yeah.
he does for that show. Do you think Danny DeVito would make a good vampire?
Oh,
He's charming enough. He's kind of like... But he's that vampire, you know, like in the sort of
you would just start laughing.
myths of vampires, there's like the really suave Count Dracula types, but then there's the ones that get like more kind of werewolfy and crazy. He'd be like halfway in between, I think, where it's just the steady descent of Danny DeVito into vampirism.
I could see that.
But
I think
like-
he would wear like a big collar too.
Oh,
like a
totally.
cape.
He'd have.
Oh my
the-
god, that would make him look so funny.
But it would be too long.
Yeah, like small and sturdy with this huge. It would look like the cone that dogs get.
It would be like taller than his head, but only in the back.
Hell yeah.
It was like the sort of protective collar for pets.
Yeah. And it
like
would like
it.
drag on the floor.
And
like
he
a
would
train.
step on it all the time.
And just like stumble over. Oh.
I think you'd make a good vampire, to be honest.
Well, what makes a good vampire, do you think? You gotta
I think
be spooky.
it really depends because there are just so many versions of vampires. That
Yeah,
I've
but our
encountered.
sort of idea is so colored by like the Bram Stoker,
Yeah.
Dracula.
So that's
Something that these documentaries talked about too. Is
yeah, it kind of defined it, but then when you look at all the folk from different regions
Yeah,
of Central
it's
and
so
Eastern Europe, it's very
different.
different.
Yeah,
and
and
there are
that-
different types as well,
definitely.
like within it. They look very different. But what I found was interesting was that male vampires had all this diversity, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Female vampires were kind of what we think of female vampires now, like, very pale skin, beautiful black hair, red lips, sort of sinister red eyes, really seductive.
And then they get stabbed in the tit.
That's how you kill a female vampire, right?
Or eyes.
They put the eyes out.
Yeah, like a stab in between or something, yeah.
There's one case of I remember reading of like a medieval Italian vampire where they put the brick in the mouth just to stop the vampire from biting anyone. Because for some reason it can't take the brick out of it.
Yeah, they're
Wait, didn't you say that you heard that some people were thinking that vampires were like chewing people and then they were listening for...
they weren't chewing people. They were
It's a shroud.
They were
They're chewing
chewing
a
their
shroud.
own shroud. So that was a German.
Yeah, they're
folk.
called shroud eaters.
And they would just loudly chew. So people would stand guard around the graves to listen to the chewing
for
sounds.
chewing. Can you imagine that being your job? Just standing above a grave, listening in the dead of night for spooky chewing sounds?
I bet you'd get a big, cone thing for your ear.
Oh, one of those, the things that you put in
An
your
ear trumpet?
Yeah.
It's just on the grave.
Yeah.
But the problem is that because sometimes, they did hear these sounds, but it was obviously natural sounds of decomposition and
just
squirrels
dirt
stepping on leaves
settling.
and stuff.
Yeah, but it's just settling and the
just
just
shifting.
decomposition and shift
And also,
within
if
the
you're just
grave.
standing there in the middle of the night listening for this, probably every sound you hear is going to be like, oh, it's a vampire.
But I did also read about some people earning money by guarding fresh corpses from witches, because obviously witches and vampires, it was all kind of connected. It was the necromancy and that sort of thing, and so a fresh corpse would be a great thing for a witch because it would give her whatever powers.
You get to
were these
reanimate
fresh
it as
corpses? Just
When somebody died. So
nobody wanted to sit. Someone had to sit by it.
Someone had to sit by it to guard it from the witches.
Oh, okay.
I also read this quote by another Czech academic. I'll read it to you. So, for spreading, things that added to the spread of sort of necromancy and that sort of magic was human jealousy and envy, maliciousness, and the desire for excitement. And I think that's the best description of Czech mentality I've ever read.
Desire for excitement.
Desire of excitement, maliciousness, and envy. Yep. So you can tell I have a
I
great
only know
sense of
one
pride.
Czech person, which is you.
There was something I heard about vampires in one of these documentaries, and they were described as a nocturnal predator from Eastern Europe.
That also sounds like the one Czech person I know.
There was some more in that quote, but that's what stood out to me.
Well, to go against that, I also read that basically, while being described as nocturnal, that sort of idea of them not being able to go out at sunlight and stuff is a very new concept.
Yeah.
And usually,
I think it comes from the sort of Bram Stoker.
yeah,
kind of-
so they were considered to roam between noon and midnight. So it would still be during a daylight sort of time. But yeah, nocturnal. Love that. From Eastern Europe. That describes...
You could also wear Danny DeVito's cape thing and just creep around in the dark.
Surprise!
It's the most serial killery.
Absolutely. A fun fact about vampires and sort of deviant burials and Sesame Street. So the Count kind of looks like Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
I was once told that there was a belief that vampires had to count everything because they were very obsessive and fastidious.
Mm-hmm.
So they would fill the grave with seeds or beads in the thought that when this supposed vampire was coming back from the dead rather, they would have to stop and count all of the beads before they could come and wreak vengeance on the townsfolk. So it would buy them a few. Yeah, it would buy them some time. So someone said that that's why the Count in Sesame Street is a vampire who has to always count everything.
Oh my god. I only now got it. The
What?
Count counts. I just got it.
He's called Count.
And he counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just got... Yeah, I was saying... I only now got it.
You're not from around here. It's
Well,
okay.
I've never actually watched Sesame Street.
Oh, okay.
He's pretty great, man.
He
Well,
counts
we
so
don't-
slowly.
We don't have that. Maybe we do
What
now.
are your children's shows in the Czech Republic?
We have so many. We have.
Are there any that are
so
on the
many.
par of Sesame Street? Keep in mind, I think Sesame Street
We've
won some
got-
Emmys.
Wait. Well, as I said, I've never watched it, so I can hardly compare it. And my sister, I think, watched it, but it was she had a DVD of it. It wasn't on TV. But also, we never had TV on at home. So, again, another issue.
It wasn't in the Czech Republic yet.
I don't know. Maybe it was. I never...
TV or
Yeah, TV. No. It's...
you all gathered around the radio to listen to?
That's not funny. We did. like in my household.
You gathered around the
We
radio.
gathered around the radio.
But was it like just, it was because your family was cultured? You were just like listening to the opera on the radio or
not
something?
the opera, but like radio.
Like old-timey radio plays?
That's kind of what
Hell yeah.
our listeners are doing right now.
Yeah.
I can
We're
only hope that
transporting
they're
you back
gathered
in
around
time.
something.
Yeah, your
Another
family or friends
well, another
listening
fun
around the
thing
old
I wanted to add to your point
Apple
about
speakers.
fun facts and the counts. Another way to kind of stop a vampire from coming back was putting a large stone or something on the grave
Yeah.
to kind of block them. So I don't actually know how to pronounce his name, but Bela Lugosi,
Yeah, that's correct.
the actor who played the famous Dracula.
Hell
His
yeah.
grave was cemented over, akin to stone being put on it, as if he was a real vampire.
I can't remember.
I
what it looks
don't
like.
know who that is. Pull it up.
Just Google.
All right.
The what is it? 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 40s.
Oh, so spooky.
I mean, he just looks Hungarian.
Is that him in the movie?
No.
That's just how he looks?
That's just how he looks. I think that's him in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, because he
using-
has the fangs.
Yeah, he's using his vampiric sort of gaze to
Yeah.
hypnotize someone. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got that big collar we're talking about.
Yeah. The Dracula style
I
collar.
just-
He's actually not that spooky
What?
looking.
Remembered something.
What?
Actually, Dracula was my sort of sexual awakening.
What?
The 1950s
Not this
Dracula?
one. Nope. Not
The
this one.
Danny DeVito Dracula?
Yeah. I
Naked
love Danny
with-
DeVito.
Oh, you mean the like
No,
the,
no, 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 no,
the
no,
one
no,
with
no, no,
Keanu
no.
Reeves?
No
The
film.
cow
Not
from
not
Sex
film. So basically what happened was, I don't know how old I was. It wasn't sexual. Like, I was a bit older for a sexual awakening, but it was fairly early on. I think I was 13, 14, I don't know. And I was meant to I was going to a theatre with my parents, but the show that we were going to go cancelled. So because it was in a different city, we kind of had to drive there. So we were like, let's go somewhere else. And just a different theatre was putting on Dracula. And I mean,
So it was like a community production of Dracula?
no. It was a real theatre, but it wasn't like the greatest.
It was actors or a film?
It was real actors.
Oh,
It was actors. It was a theater. They were putting it on, and
You are
it
cultured.
wasn't. Yeah, we didn't have TV, so we had to go to the
You
theater.
went to the theater.
Honestly, it was not a great show, but the person who played Dracula was so charismatic, and obviously there was a lot of like sexual thing going on. It was like, I remember like I was just there being like,
There were some
I would.
feelings that you didn't
Yeah.
fully grasp.
I think I knew what was going on at that age, but I was like, I want to be hypnotized by this man.
Wow.
It was an
It's just an
interesting
nocturnal
experience.
predator.
It was a very interesting experience for me. Well, now you know my deepest secrets.
Cool.
So do you still think about that?
Yeah, you periodically
sometimes, right?
reflect back on this Dracula man.
I'll go home today thinking about this Dracula man.
Huh.
It's very. The rest of the show was shit, but this guy was.
It's a good Dracula. Well, you need a good Dracula for your...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're meant to be charismatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is something that, again, comes from the Bram Stoker, because a lot of these like medieval or earlier kind of conceptions of vampires or revenants or the undead or whatever are just kind of like they were just random peasants from the village come back to life to kind of do malevolent deeds. So they didn't have this.
Yeah.
This
Well, in
charisma.
apparently in some Slavic folks stories, they did just get married and have children and
The
things like that. The
They just
vampires.
wanted to come
Just
live
live a
like a
normal
second
life.
life.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't read the actual stories. I just read about him, so I'm not sure what was the purpose
Yeah.
of doing that. If it was something malicious or not, but apparently they did do that. So that solves the question about can vampires procreate or not?
Oh, interesting. Yes.
In this story,
In this story, the
these
vampire
stories, they
doesn't
could-
have a problem with erectile dysfunction.
yes.
But they
good to
often
know.
do, yeah.
But they often do.
Well, they don't have blood, really, do they? Which is kind of an important ingredient.
That's what I said
That's
before.
what they're looking for, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. That's the vampire's sole reason
We've
for
solved it.
drinking blood. It's like to get a boner.
So, yeah.
I went a very different way with my research because I was getting bored reading about archaeology because that's what I do all day, every day.
Hell yeah.
So I started to think about what would a deviant burial today be like.
Ooh.
So it's not, I didn't go with spooky stuff. I just went with what are the burials that deviate from the norm in contemporary Western society. So I started Googling all the weird shit that you can do with your body after you're dead. So one of my favorite ones, you can get launched not only into space, not only to orbit the moon, but to the actual surface of the moon. And then your remains can stay on the surface of the moon.
I want that.
That's cool, right?
I think that's...
They've done it for astronauts that have died and just like really rich people.
Didn't Leonard Nimoy get launched into space? I feel
Yes,
like
yes,
he
it's
did.
the same company, him too, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
How much does it cost?
Not that much. From what I can tell, it says the experience starts at 12 grand.
That's like probably less than a regular funeral.
Yeah, funerals are so expensive. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And in addition to launching your loved one's cremated remains onto the moon, you can also launch your own DNA as a living person to just chill out on the moon.
In perpetuity.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't think that's a good idea. Some alien's gonna snatch it and do something with it, and you never know.
I don't know about that.
No?
I
Really?
believe in vampires, but not aliens. I draw the line.
But
What
I
kind
think
of-
it's a good idea because we do suffer from lack of space, especially for people who have issues with cremation.
Well, I think you have to be cremated and then they ship your remains. It can't be your whole body.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it would cost considerably more if you were shooting a whole body up there. Do you think they just like launch a rocket up and then it just like dumps you into space?
They're probably just lying about the whole thing and they just tell you that they did it.
Just throw
Just
you
put it down, down the
like
drain.
in a dumpster somewhere.
Who's gonna check?
Yeah. Somebody with a telescope is looking to make sure. Just a little plot on the moon of like nicely dug graves. Huh. Okay. Follow up, I guess. If you were having a deviant burial, what would you want?
Well, let me just tell you a few more.
Okay,
There's a few more good ones that I found. I'll just go through them pretty quick.
Take your time.
You
Yeah.
can.
I've talked for like half an hour. You can as well.
You can take. It's mostly. I think everything I looked up was cremation stuff because that's
what you're interested in.
what I do.
Also, most modern is kind of all cremations.
Yeah.
Or predominantly.
And there's not much you can do with like a whole body. You can like freeze it and fill your veins with plastic and be in one of those like exhibits.
Gunter von Hagens.
That's the one. You can get different kinds of little cremation urns. For example, one that is just a teddy bear. It has this little heart, plush heart, that has a zipper on it, and you put the
That's
cremated
weird.
remains in there, and then put the heart inside the teddy bear, and then
And
the
then
teddy
does, like,
bear is the urn.
That
But then
reminds
does
me
like a child then have this as a treasured sort of
Well, that's
friend?
what I thought. And then the problem is that it says this urn is designed for a loved one with a healthy weight of 15 pounds or less before cremation, which means it's for a child.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Sad.
Well, listen, if you're interested in the teddy bear urn, they're having a Mother's Day sale. I'm not joking. It's $10 off.
Oh, God.
Christ.
Oh,
That's really dark.
that's so dark.
Okay. These ones are less creepy. You can turn... They say that you can turn... I've heard this before. You can turn your cremated remains into a diamond.
Yeah, I've
because they
heard that.
can
I've talked to my parents about that actually, like getting some sort of crazy like family heirloom.
Pinky ring.
Yeah, just that
Oh.
gets passed down the generations.
What color would you go for?
Just classic.
No, black?
Oh, maybe. I think they're tinted by whatever sort of chemicals are in your body at the time.
Yeah.
Really?
I think
But
so.
listen,
Like trace elements.
The problem that I run into with this is
Probably
that
gonna be loads of medication.
Yeah. Everything says they compress it and the carbon in it becomes like a diamond, but there's no carbon in cremated bone because there's no organic component. It's calcium and phosphate and a bunch of other shit. So I don't actually know what they're talking about because there shouldn't be any carbon if it's fully cremated. Unless it's like not fully cremated or it's residual like coffin stuff.
Or do they get the residuals like as it's burning off?
I don't know.
And collect that? We'll do more research for a future episode.
Yeah, or we can just be like, we can just say that they're completely lying and it's a
yeah,
sham.
But it's still pretty cool to be able to compress your
They'll just give you a diamond and take the body and do something else
sort
with
of,
it.
Which is fine.
Like, you wouldn't find that in the archaeological record in the future or whatever, like, as a deviant burial. Really.
No, I'm just looking at, like, these are
the sort of different...
The deviant death stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that's, like, not the
Well,
stuff.
deviant burial, which is kind of more of a burial and modern thing, is those pots that turn you into a tree.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that would probably we could describe as a deviant burial, you know, where you just kind of I think you're not cremated, it's your entire body. Or not? I think it was the entire body.
Then it's organic stuff that like feeds the tree.
Yeah, so it's and it gets put into I don't know how big a pot, this egg-looking thing. It's got shoved to the ground, and the tree grows out of it.
That's pretty cool.
That's nice.
Just cool because you kind of get turned into so you can all the poetry that could be written about how people go and sit by that tree because it's you.
You know, when I was in Iceland one time, I went with my friend and we were, we had to walk somewhere and we walked through a cemetery to get there. And all of the graves had a tree growing out of it.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I guess I didn't look into it, so I have no idea. But I guess they always plant a tree for the person. So it was cute.
Really
They
nice.
each had a tree.
That's very nice.
Yeah, till the tree dies.
Another
cool thing you can do, they can make a vinyl record, press a vinyl record with any music or sound you want on it, but as
screaming,
just before they just screaming.
Jesus.
Just like sounds of death sounds.
Your death rattle, your final like for your loved ones to have forever.
Yeah, you could do that. And before, when the vinyl's like, I don't really know how it works, like hot or something, before they press it, they sprinkle some of, like a little teaspoon of your ashes on top, and then they press it, and it's clear vinyl, so you can see it when you hold it up, and it makes it a little bit like scratchy sounding. And
it makes the record pop like old-timey
because
style.
it's like all crusty on it. And the guy was like, so that's your loved one.
Talking to.
Huh.
So instead of being like, oh, can you pass me that band records? Can you pass me Grandma, please?
Yep.
Let's listen to some Grandma. Lovely.
Okay, so now that we know a few of these types, what would your deviant burial be?
Oh, wait, I forgot the best one.
Oh, my God.
No, you're going to love this.
Okay.
It's so American.
Hell yeah.
You can get your cremated remains packed into shotgun bullets. I don't know what they're called.
Shells.
Yeah. And then shoot them, and the company who does it is called Holy Smoke.
Fuck yeah.
Yes,
I thought that
I love it.
It was going to be like fireworks or something.
That's another. They do that as well.
I feel
4th
like
of July fireworks.
that gives a different
Your loved
meaning
ones.
to double suicide or like murder suicide
Oh
boy.
If you use those for the wrong.
because you're like if you kill yourself with one of these, is the person killing you? I mean, no.
Probably not.
No,
We know the answer, but
Of course not.
somebody can make a philosophical debate out of it. Not me.
I'd go to the moon. I think I would go to the moon.
You do the moon?
You love space.
I love
you love
space.
spacey things.
I love the Apollo program. So yeah, I would go to the moon, dead or alive.
Cool.
Here at NASA.
Yes, do you hear me?
Just qualified
NASA?
astronaut right here.
So qualified. I know.
I can excavate on the moon.
Saturn 5, I can do archaeology on the moon. Listen, if they need someone with a trowel
Yeah,
to
I'll
just
dig.
go take a look at the stratigraphy.
Send me to Mars.
Yes,
I'll dig on Mars.
absolutely.
Would you do it if it's a one-way?
I'd have to think about that.
I'm thinking about it right now. Would I have to pay my student loans?
No.
Maybe.
Yeah, just to get away from the loans. All right, yeah, that's a very good sort of motivator to go, just to get away from your crippling debt.
I don't know. I don't think I'd do it one way at this stage.
No.
No, not yet.
Would you guys? No.
No, I feel like there are still.
I wouldn't want to be on like the first or second trip to Mars, because I mean, they're gonna get there and then find out like the habitat doesn't work or something. And
Well,
then,
did you listen to the new podcast called Habitat?
I haven't. No.
It's about
Shout out other podcasts.
Yeah, hey Habitat. So it's, you know how they want to send people to Mars?
Yeah.
They figured out that sending people there, they would have to be there for at least a year before they'd be able to safely bring them back.
Yeah.
With like, you know, whenever they can like launch them. So there would have to be people living in this habitat on Mars for a year. Atmosphere's toxic. You can only go outside with a spacesuit. You'd be living in close quarters with these people. Not a lot of water, blah, blah, blah. So they sent a bunch of people, like young adult, could be astronaut kind of people, to this completely desolate volcano in Hawaii that is like sort of a spacescape seeming place.
Yeah.
They have an exact replica of the habitat. They can't go outside unless they have a spacesuit on. They have to live that way for an entire year.
Yeah.
And they were given like a little recording device.
And that is happening right now.
I guess
the
it must
experiment's
have.
still
I
going?
guess it already happened because,
That's so
or
cool.
maybe it's happening right now. I don't know. The podcast I think is new.
That's really cool.
Yeah, because they were like, we test all of our equipment, obviously, to make sure it's fine. We have to test our humans to make sure that like they can live with each other. People can live with each other
I
for
think
a year.
Psychologically, that's gonna be the most.
Yeah.
If there's someone on that crew who's just like a little bit annoying,
Yeah. Done.
they're dead.
I mean, it's a great premise for a horror. One of them is the murderer.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But I'm a fairly comfortable person. I feel like I can, I don't need it, but I like it. So I would go there after like they kind of set it up. You know, I don't want to be the first
You want to
person
be
setting
a
up.
Mars pioneer.
Yeah. I wanna go there like, fairly early, but not early, so that I don't get all of the discomfort I can get. They set it up.
I think
and
trip
then I go.
3 is the one to go on.
I'll be alright at 5.
I go trip 3.
I think I'd go 1.
You go trip 1 to Mars.
I might go 1.
Just to be the first
Just
person
check it
on
out.
Mars. Yeah.
Well,
All right. Well,
I just love space.
it's great.
What do
We'll
you think,
see each other there.
What do you think they would do with dead bodies? I guess they just shoot them out
I mean,
into space.
where else?
Right?
It's a great.
They're not going to bury them.
well, in The
I don't
Martian,
know.
they talk about like how
I like that movie. That
when he
movie's
died,
good.
when they still think he's dead, they're like, well, his body will be covered in dust in like 28 months. So
Oh, because it's stormy.
yeah,
and
you could just
sandy,
leave a
yeah.
body out.
Yeah, but we don't want to do that. We don't litter.
I presume they would just. Space is full of garbage, and like they just leave things on Mars all the time.
Yeah, we already littered on Mars, but I think what better place to if you already have the technology to go on Mars, what better place to get rid of dead bodies than the space? It will just
Yeah, but then you have to expend all the energy to like launch it into space. I think they'd probably just do like your standard burial, but I would want one of
But
the
if there's like a gravity issue,
I think if you dig a
Just
like a
like
decent hole, it's
blow
like-
it out.
I don't think that's
Imagine
gonna happen.
you trying to dig up the hole and like the sand is just float like as
It
you're
would just
throwing
be,
it.
It would just be an easier way. like they could do that contest on Mars, and
It'd be
these
so
guys
much
would dig
easier to
pits
dig,
twice
yeah.
as fast.
Well,
But
what,
anyways,
what,
I'd want the fucking solar panel from one of the like defunct landers as the headstone.
Oh, nice.
So my deviant burial
Yeah.
choice. I forget if I talked about this last episode. It's where I want to be mummified and put in
yes, yes.
a wall. Okay, I did talk about it.
Yeah, you did. Oh,
Well,
that's
good
that's
one.
that's still the best one. Still
Just
the best
fall in
one.
and scare somebody. I don't know if that really counts or if it's just kind of like a practical joke, but
I think that counts.
I
It
think
deviates.
it's
Yeah.
deviates from the norm very much.
speaking of hiding in the walls, there's a friend of mine just sent an article about how there was somebody found in a wall in a bathroom in Calgary, back in Canada.
Dead.
Yeah. I didn't read the full article, but it was just like, because had just been discovered, and so the police were just saying, oh yeah, this person was found in the wall. And then there was a line where it's like, foul play is not suspected.
Oh, except they were put into a wall.
So
Yeah. I don't...
how do you fall?
Yes, that was one of the suggestions, was that somebody was like climbing through the ductwork and like fell down behind a wall and then was just trapped there until they died.
Oh god, that's gross.
Very-
I don't really think about death. Funny enough, being a
Really?
death-related
Think about it
archaeologist.
all the time.
So yeah, I have there's quite a large kind of wall between me and death, and I don't think about it. And also, I'm not funny, so I went to a design show once, and they did have urns, which were really cute. A lot of funny paintings, and it was very designer, but in a fun way. And it was like a great accessory for the modern designer house. So I wouldn't mind like that in my house with a
Just a
little.
nice designer.
Just a nice-
like a Gucci urn or something.
That's tacky, but I would love that.
That is a bit
Oh my
tacky.
god. Like a good tacky.
Or like a
urn.
huge one. Just like
Just
an unnecessarily huge urn.
Like those like old you know when you have like these mansions and they have next to the staircase this big vases.
Yeah.
Something like that, like this size,
Exactly.
like a yeah.
I thought I saw a dead person the other day.
Oh, really?
I was coming back from something, and it was the middle of the day, and I was taking an Uber, and it let me out in front of my house, and the driver and I both looked into the grassy yard in front of my house, and we both saw this guy laying face down in the grass, like he had fallen there,
Yeah.
not like he was resting. And I was like, "Do you see that guy?" And he's like, "Yep." And I was like, "Okay, bye, thanks." 4 stars. So I get out, and I was like, I didn't want to just leave him there, right?
Yeah.
So I got up and walked over close to him and was trying to yell to him to see
you
if he was
okay?
okay. Yeah. And he wasn't even moving at all. So I tried to kick his foot a little bit to wake him up.
You kicked this man.
So I just kicked him really hard. I just gently
You nudged him.
kicked his foot to see if he would wake up or startle or something, and he literally didn't move at all. And then I just kind of stood there okay. And then I was like, I guess I need to call someone, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to call the 911 police because I was like, maybe it's not an emergency, and I was too afraid that it would be if I called the 911 police, because I don't know even what number you call in this country.
111, I think.
Yeah, 111's non-emergency. 999 is emergency.
999. So I was like, I don't
But I
want to
think
call
there
999.
being a dead body there is probably...
I know, but I was
999.
what if they get here and he wakes up and then I'll be I'll get in trouble? I
Yeah.
didn't want to call, so I called the not 911 police,
Okay.
the just regular police, and I was like, there's just some guy passed out in my front yard, I don't know. And he was like, why didn't you call an ambulance? And I was like, well, I thought that's what I was doing. And I played the American card, and I was like, oh, I'm not from around here, so I don't really know. And he's like, oh, okay, we'll send an ambulance. And then I read, and then he was asking me all these questions. He's like, does he look like he's hurt? And I was like, no, he looks like he fell. He was like, does he smell like alcohol? And I was like, I'm not going to sniff him, because what if he moves and then I'll get scared? And I was basically just too scared to get even close to him or look at him, and I was like,
Keep in mind, everyone in the radio land that we study dead bodies for a living.
We see them all the time, but not in my yard. And then I was like, I'm just gonna go into my house, bye. And I like hung up the phone and just went out onto my balcony and like watched. And some other lady went up to him, and I had a feeling he would wake up. Like I thought maybe he's dead, but I didn't really think he was dead, because why would he be dead? He was like a young guy. And I
Also, you
just,
live
like,
in England, and you know that
right.
people here just drink to the point that they pass
11 o'clock
out.
in the morning. Yeah. And another lady went up to him and just kind of like picked him up and like shook him. Like, I wasn't trying to like touch that man. And he got out and just sort of like was very disoriented and like stumbled off. So then I had to call back, because I was like, now what if they get here and there's no body? I'm going to get in trouble with the not 911 police again. So I called them again and was like, you can cancel the ambulance.
He got
that I never even needed. But I thought I saw a dead man, and then it turns out I didn't. I guess I should have called the real emergency.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, no, I wouldn't want to touch it, because I know, like, you know, like, you have all these stories about how people mess up crime scenes, and obviously you know what you have to do on a crime scene. You know how easily it is contaminated. So,
I know, and I even kicked his foot. And I was
Yeah,
like, maybe I shouldn't kick his foot, but I had to like see if he would wake up, right?
Yeah.
Oh, but I didn't want. I was afraid he would like wake up and then be startled and then scare me. I just didn't want to be scared, because I was scared of being scared.
So you're just a coward.
Moral of the story is, I'm a coward.
Me too.
I mean, I've never done any sort of forensics work, so I'm just solely dealing with ancient dead.
Forensics is
They're not
fine,
really spooky.
because you are not the first person on the scene. You know,
Unless they're dead in your front yard.
Yeah, but you're not doing that as your job. You're being a normal citizen.
Yes.
When you're working as a forensic whatever, expert, the police is on the scene first, and you get there and it's all corded off, and you know there's nothing scary coming. You know,
Yeah,
like
that's true.
it's just a dead
What
body.
if you're working in the morgue late one night?
That is spooky. I think I would have to really get used to that.
Vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, it's just I'm quite a scared person, so even if I'm home alone, I can really easily spook myself.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In my head, I just start thinking, and then I can't stop it, and I just scare myself, and it's just horrible, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I would do that very easily in any sort of.
If you were one of those people who had to listen to the vampires gnawing the shrouds.
Oh God.
To bring it back to Deviant burials.
Yeah.
Tangents. There was one case I read about a while back, and then it was brought up again in this documentary. Was like a modern example of people exhuming a dead body and then like doing some vampire slaying rituals on it. So this was a case that happened in 2004 in Romania.
Of course it did.
There was a girl who was in her mid-20s claiming she was just feeling really ill and like not sleeping well, and then she was claiming that the ghost of her deceased, or the vampire of her deceased uncle, was coming in the night and drinking her blood. So everyone in the village, or not everyone, like a group of 10 men in the village, like pitchfork, torch mob style, went to the grave of this uncle, exhumed him, cut him open, and then like took out the heart, impaled the heart with the pitchforks, and then burned it at the village like crossroads. And then after that, they take the ashes and they made like a potion out of it and gave it to the girl to cure her. And then it's fine after that. Like the girl's magically better. Like all the there's like news crews there because this happened, and like the vampire's wife is like, she called the police because she's like, there's a mob of men who are digging up my husband and they're cutting him open, and like she's crying on camera, and it's insane. And then all the villagers are like, yeah, they did the right thing. we can't have this vampire stalking the village. And then there was like the local bishop was like, this can't happen. The church does not support this. This is not what we do. And then the man who like actually cut open the body like went into hiding for like a decade or something,
because it's illegal.
Oh yeah. So the woman like reporting this story like eventually tracks him down, and he like describes like the whole thing, and she's like, "Are you afraid of this vampire retribution?" And it's like, "No, I did the right thing. He was gonna kill that girl, and she's got children, and we can't have that." And it was like all of these people believed that this was the right thing to do.
There's the mob mentality.
And they all believed the girl.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say like, oh, she came up with this story about her uncle.
No, I don't think so either. But it's interesting that everyone
believed
it to be true,
to
be something that occurred.
Yeah.
Well,
it was interesting to see, and that's the kind of cool thing is that there's like deviant burials sort of there are vampires stopping the explanation for a lot of these happenings, kind of like 1100s, 1200s, according to this documentary. And then afterwards, it's kind of demons and witches are the explanations, but then as sort of science progresses, these explanations die out and it becomes like disease and whatnot.
I was at some point, I was really interested in documentaries about witches, like modern witches. So I just watched loads of YouTube videos, and in this video they said that witches do not have to pay taxes in Romania. And this politician was...
So why isn't everyone a witch?
Well, maybe because people actually believe that you have to be somehow born a witch. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that much about
I didn't choose the witch life. The witch life chose me.
But apparently this politician wanted to, start taxing because it's just a job as any other. And also he wanted to kind of expose it as a fraud. And blah,
do you get
blah, blah.
healthcare when you're a witch?
No idea. You should ask them. I'm sure you do. We do all have healthcare in Eastern Europe. But
I mean, I'm from Canada. We have healthcare too.
Just you.
Just me.
But the witches were like, threatening him with like curses and death and stuff like that. And he actually like stopped. Like he didn't pass.
He gave up.
He gave up. Yeah. Because it was like all these witches from all over the country just like going together and cursing him and stuff.
Ooh. Okay, I think we need to wrap it up somehow.
All right, one more good solid
Bring
witch
it on
riff.
home.
Witches be crazy.
Oh god. Well, have we explained anything about deviant burials in this episode?
Yeah, we said what they were. We talked about...
They're not just limited to Eastern Europe. You get them in Italy,
everywhere.
The UK.
You get them outside of Europe as well.
Yeah. Well, if you like hearing random facts about death, and if you ever wanted to know whether or not vampires get erections, more hard-hitting reporting like that is what you can look forward to in future episodes of the Dead Kids Club. So tune in next time. Crack open your beers, turn on a nice new episode of the Dead Kids Club, and give us a rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes.